Hey everyone, what up? Matt Kaiser here, and it's finally time to put my Granblue arc to a close. Well, for now at least, with of course an obligatory review. Now, if you read the title, you might be curious about what I mean about is this game worth the 8-year rate? Well, strap in folks, grab a seat, and maybe some snacks and a refreshing beverage, as it's history time. Even though I already made a video about this, but might as well bring it up once more. So, in 2016, Cygames announced Granblue Fantasy Project Relink at the PlayStation conference, both spearheaded by both main series director Tetsuya Fukuhara and Platinum Games alumni known as Yasuyuki Kaji, with having Platinum Games develop this game, and it showed some promising gameplay back in 2017, and also had this intriguing concept of including online co-op with having up to 4 players for multiplayer, or even having the option of a single-player campaign with 3 other party members controlled by, well, party AI. And initially, it was meant to release for 2018, though it got delayed. Then a year later, in 2019, Platinum Games would announce that they would step down from the project, having filled their contract with the combat, with leaving Cygames themselves to handle the rest, though Kaji himself stayed on board. So, I guess it's not entirely dramatic as, say, the whole Final Fantasy VII Remake, when that game was initially outsourced by CyberConnect 2, with Nomura himself as well as Katase being overseers. Though, obviously, they cut their losses and Square Enix took back the project and started all the way from scratch in-house. Though, it did unfortunately start a recurrence of it trying to have a release date, but then delay, with the second attempt being around for 2022 and then winter 2023. Though thankfully, and finally, thank God, it got a release date for February 1st, 2024 for PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, as well as the PC via Steam, and this one particularly was advertised as another entry in the Granblue Fantasy series that not only fans can enjoy, but also newcomers can also get into. And no, before you ask, this game is not a gacha like the mobile game, and it is definitely not a live service.
Everybody got that?
Also, more of the story, kids, never reveal your games too early. Something that other companies never seem to learn even now. And of course, I'll be going with the PS5 version for this review. But before we begin, if you like what you're seeing here, then by all means, like the video, click the subscribe button if you're new, and hit that bell notification icon if you want more reviews from your, well, truly. Not only that, but I'm currently about to work on my Persona 5 special review playthrough, and hopefully by the end of this year, I'll be able to review such a modern JRPG masterpiece as reward for getting 750 subscribers. So please do look forward to that. And with that said, back to the video, and going through all the formalities, all I can say is that ready your weapons, climb aboard the Grand Cypher, and set sail through the skies as we head straight into Granblue Fantasy Relink. So, our tale begins with our main captain, depending on who you choose, whether it's Gran or Jita, as well as having characters like, Lyria, Vern, and the rest of the Grand Cypher crew. Characters like Rackham, Catalina, Io, Eugen, and Rosetta, who stumbled upon a brand new skydom called the Ziga Grande Skydom, filled with lots of different islands inhabited by rampant primal beasts. Though in this one particular, the locals themselves just call them primeval gods, with the main star, as well as general ally, named Roland, or Mr. Fix-It Dude.
But it's Roland,
who knows the skydom like the back of his hand, and also is very much beloved by many, though funny enough, there is no Mr. Wreck-It Dude. unless if of course you count the monsters, the primal beasts, as well as the general overarching threat that's looming in this game, which of course transition us to, well, the crew themselves encountering the main villains themselves being the Church of Avia, an evil holy organization led by the shepherd Lilith, as well as being housed by generals including ones such as Id, Galanza, and Maglio, with their goal as well as beliefs to obtain the powers of the primeval gods, as well as also obtaining the power of Livia herself, who they believe is the main key of opening the door to a fabled utopia known as Estelucia, the island of the Astrals, and they believe it shall bring upon salvation. With that set in stone, the Grand Cypher crew, alongside Roland, plans to stop the church with their plans that will potentially even cause destruction all over the Skydom. And that is the story. And just like say Cadacris with his thoughts about Jedi Fallen Order story, it's not amazing, but it gets the job done. It's not too bad either, but it's not entirely groundbreaking as well. It's not saying itself to be, one big Shakespearean emotional masterpiece. Rather, it's just one simple grand adventure, with it being easy follow. As well as even technically speaking in a sense, well, it's easy to understand, as this game is sort of connected to the main Granblue Fantasy series in a sense, with the characters already pre-established. And as for fans of said series via say, the mobile, the anime, or even the fighting games, can understand this story very well, like me. Though when it comes to newcomers, it's a little bit tricky. Not maybe like on the levels of say starting with Kingdom Hearts 3 as your first Kingdom Hearts game, or Trails of Cold Steel 4 as your first Trails game, as there is of course dialogue as well as the Fate episodes that gives some context about the main cast in general and what their lives were like before they met each other. But all of it's really told rather than shown, and if you can get by that, then I think you're okay just enough. But if you prefer for all of that to be shown in full context, then my suggestion would have to be is that you watch the anime, as it does 98% of a good showing of the characters, introducing them and developing them. That being said, the cast themselves are still good and likable as always, though the real stars would have to be the brand new characters introduced in Relink, particularly with Roland being a very cool side character, as well as the Church of Avia serving as solid antagonists, with being the standout of course being Id, for lots of reasons though that's spoiler territory, as well as Lilith, being one that you just love to hate, and no guys, you cannot fix her. Voice acting all around is also very good, with each VA reprising their role from the other entries, such as Carl McCarley and Erica Harker reprising as both Gran and Jita respectively, as well as Kira Buckland as Lyria, and even the new ones such as Sean Chiplock as Roland and Robbie Damon as Id are also pretty great. Not only that, but the story itself is even well paced, not wasting your time, as well as the story mode itself has just some really cool impactful moments, as well as some set pieces that, in my opinion, makes this journey memorable. Though one oddity with the story is the recruitable characters only being shown in some cutscenes, which is really kind of jarring as they aren't fully shown in the main story. Though transition to some of them, with like the exception of a few outliers, which not gonna lie, it's really jarring. I would assume that this thing would be handled like say Star Ocean, but I guess that would have been taken, lots of work to implement them completely in the main story cutscenes. Also, I do want to point out that the story itself is sort of divided in two acts in a sense, with the first one basically being 10 chapters, which you can do an average playthrough of maybe say 12 hours or more if you play the story only, and the last one being one big epilogue, which you do by unlocking quests that can add maybe say a potential 20 hours. And without spoiling, what happens during the epilogue is truly epic. Now we get on to the visuals, And man, is this game just absolutely beautiful. Just overall having just some very pretty cell shading as well as just fully stylized graphics that truly match with the aesthetic of Granblue itself. Something that you normally won't see in the mobile game, anime or fighting game. But in Relink, it's fully realized here, especially for 3D. And honestly, the results just make this game look absolutely fantastic. Just having just some gorgeous environments and towns that are just stunning to look at, like Seed Hollow for example. And the same can be said for the characters, who look obviously great as usual, but even better in this game. A huge turnaround to seeing what this game originally looked like back in 2016 to now. How far have we come? Now obviously I played this game like most others on performance mode for PlayStation 5, and I was able to even get a good solid 60 FPS, to the point that even if there were frame drops, I barely noticed them, especially when you have huge powerful effects from bosses or even tons of enemies. It didn't even get too hectic, or exploration was just, damage. I mean, heck, exploration itself was very smooth. There are of course, static, less important cutscenes with the Granblue UI you see, and for what they are, they're pretty alright. Though what's really impressive is the main story cutscenes, as side games themselves just knocked it out of the park, making this game just look absolutely cinematic and beautiful, on par with games like Tales of Rise or even Xenoblade Chronicles 3, as personally I would say. And here we are, with the gameplay segment, and I'll be honest, there's a lot to break down, to the point I think it'll be way too long for this review. So I'll just do a little bit of the general combat and some of the overall RPG mechanics, more condensed per se. Does that sound good? Okay? Alright, let's go. So Granblue Fantasy Relink is an action RPG, and it obviously has real-time action combat, and you have things like say your normal attack, as well as mostly even a heavy attack, which some characters do vary of course. And you also have both a guard and a dodge that you can both guard up to 3 times and dodge up to 3 times. And if you guard at the 3rd time, your guard will be broken, and if you dodge at the 3rd time, you'll be able to have a long cooldown which prevents you to dodge for a short period of time. And if you're able to do either a perfect guard or dodge, you'll be able to get a small window of invincibility. You're also even able to do some aerial dodges themselves, as well as even launch in the air to juggle some areas. Though, the other thing you also have in your kit is the skills, and these involve things like being either passive, aggressive, defensive, as well as also having things like stealth elements and buffs and debuffs. Though, another thing you get later down the line is more sigils, and obviously using these skills will give you a cooldown, though once you get more sigils, as well as even having more masteries, and even lots of skills that are enhanced, these cooldowns will get a lot much more shorter. You also have this link attack, which is this blue bar, and you're able to fill it by either doing lots of attacks from either your party or yourself. And once you're able to fill that, you are able to put the drop on enemies for an extra attack. And then you also have a link time gauge, which is basically recording on how many link attacks you do, and once you reach up to 100% and do one more successful link attack, you are able to activate it, and this will allow time to slow down, Zawado style. Not only that, but this will actually give you things like say health regeneration, as well as less cooldown times for your skills, and being able to combo enemies for a while till the gauge runs out. Though the other cool thing in your kit is the Skybound Arts, which are basically your super moves. And basically once you're able to either do or take damage, they are filled up to 100%, and once they are full, you get to unleash one powerful devastating move. But what separates it from other supers in action RPGs is being able to chain them together with other party members, where if their other SPA gauges are full, they can follow up, and if you're able to get a full-on 4 SPA attacks at once, you're able to do a chain burst, which gives you an extra attack involving an AoE, based on the element of the character who started the whole chain to begin with.
Did somebody say boom?
Shine as one! Ascension!
And this is basically your Xenoblade chain attack. Guess I can say, I'm really feeling it.
Thanks, Vern. You're a lifesaver.
Though if the timing is off, you can also get your 2 chains or 3 chains that are close to being possible. And then we move on to bosses. Lots of them ranging from giant dragons, goblins, golems, crocodiles, as well as other monsters, as well as even humanoid enemies, all of which would have hard-hitting and telegraphed attacks, and you have to be really wary of, especially when they go into overdrive mode, which is basically their desperation move, throwing lots of attacks, some of which even resemble hard-hitting MMO attacks, that are both unblockable and require some dodging. Now, I know what some of you are thinking when you see the gameplay here, that these bosses look a bit spongy, like some other action RPGs have recently been doing. And to that I say, well, these bosses, while they don't juggle or go down easy like regular grunts, they do have their fair share of weak points, and other parts where they can be staggered for some time even. There's also even other things to exploit. And once you have all the other mechanics like your link attacks, link time, SPA move, chain bursts, where they even been used to attack enemies when they're broken, as well as also inflicting status elements such as your slow, your burn, your freeze, your paralysis, the whole shebang, then it'll be much more easier to deal with, and they obviously become really fun bosses in general. Not only that, but I obviously played this game on hard mode, and for the most part it was relatively easy, until for some certain bosses and when I did reach the epilogue, though it was more of a fair challenge than just cheap mechanics. On top of that, you're also able to cancel combos by either dodging or guarding, which is great, especially when you really want to get out of a tight situation. Not only that, but other characters you get to play as are very distinct and have their own unique playstyles, with their own pros and cons, and none of them even feel like clones like Warrior Musu games tend to always have, and some of which, well, leads me to my other point that people have saying that this game feels like a Muso Warriors game, and outside of say like Fate Summer Remnant, I would have to disagree, as most Warrior Musu games tend to be mainly easy and just sort of simple brain-dead fun, knocking 1000 enemies with just one single attack. Not to mention that, to my knowledge, you can't even launch enemies and juggle them, aerial combos, like you would in a normal action RPG. And honestly, even things like say, in this game, you have to be even more alert with enemy attacks, as well as even taking skills to combo them in general. Not only that, but characters like say Rakim and Yujin themselves, who are both gunslingers, feel significantly different to play as, and overall the roster themselves is just overall fun. And if you're gonna ask who's my favorite, well, it's obviously Namaya for multiple reasons. Among that, there are also a handful of RPG elements, like equipping sigils that will give you bonus effects, masteries after you level up through your skill tree to gain either new effects, skills, or enhanced skills in general, as well as including skills for your weapons in general. And you're also able to forge new weapons and upgrade them, as well as your sigils, and they include things like uncapping levels and imbuing them, and alongside you gather materials by completing quests, or they just lie across chests in the maps. As well as you're also even able to have loadouts for your own characters, so you're free to customize and experiment with them. And when your character is knocked into critical status and on the verge of dying, you are given a timer showing how much you can have to live before it's game over. And if you're party members or if you use some inputs that can revive you in good time, you are restored to full health. And have to say, when it comes to exploration, especially in this game, with its overall level design, it's really good, based on the lines of having no semi-open sublinear level design, which is a huge thumbs up for me, with having lots of multiple pathways and different shortcuts off the beaten path to find some treasure as well as secret enemies along the way. My only gripe, however, is that outside of the chapter select which you beat after beating, let's say, Act 1, you can't really visit these levels and explore them on your own. Now, the overall combat and gameplay is pretty good, all things considered, but there's some caveats which I have to get through. And first and foremost, the lock-on, it's garbage. It's absolutely abysmal at times, especially against mobs or bosses that have one more target point, as it just fluctuates all over the place. And even the camera moves where it just gets infuriating, to a point that tracking doing combos just gets really harder than it needs to be. Hey everyone, Post-Edit Kaiser here. Well, it turns out in the middle of editing this video, I just found out from Granblue Fantasy Relink that the game will have some quality of life updates that will be coming in version 1.10, and it will include things like previously requested expanded camera sensitivity, as well as lock-on options. But that's not all, as things like mass sigil transmutation, as well as update key binding options are currently in the works for a future update. So that's something I want to clear up just a bit. Anyway, with that, back to the video. Another thing is that even though I do like the skills, you can only activate them on the ground. And not gonna lie, I kinda wish that you would also have skills that are activated depending whether you are either in the air or the ground. Or heck, maybe even have something like 4 skills on the ground or 4 skills in the air. Something that even games like say Tales of Arise or Final Fantasy VII Rebirth have taken account. Another thing that I'm pretty sure many have complained about is the fact that you can't switch characters mid-battle. And while I do get that, especially if it comes to co-op, during the main story, where you can only play as single player, I wish you can be able to have that option, especially when it comes to cases where, characters die or get stats affected, so you can keep the combat going. Another gripe I would say that I kinda wished was that fast travel should have been implemented from the moment you entered your first town, until just, waiting for Act 1 to unlock it. But aside from that, I can just say is that overall I did like the gameplay, and I do hope that some of these issues do get patched or maybe even a sequel of some kind. But all in all, the gameplay in Granblue Fantasy Relink is still good, and definitely one of my favorite combat systems in an action RPG. Whew, that took a long time. Oh my god, 10 minutes. Oh boy. And now we get on to the music. And yeah, just like with the Granblue series in general, Relink has some amazing bangers, with this one being done by Tsutomu Narita. I hope I'm not butchering that. And he himself did an amazing job, giving both epic and energetic battle themes and boss themes, as well as calming and relaxing themes, especially in towns. And they also include some rearrangements of the series' main themes in general, that once legendary Final Fantasy composer himself, Nobuo Uematsu, composed. And the theme song itself is beautiful as well. And, well, of course, You know where this is going, so it's time to transition to you listening to some samples. And then we move on to the content. And just like with the gameplay, there's a lot to unpack, so I'll keep it condensed. And hopefully it doesn't take me 10 minutes to wrap things up. First and foremost, you have your typical side fetch quest things, and these can be completed by mainly doing general quests, which of course is the other main meat of this game. Having different varieties of ones involving killing waves of enemies, taking down bosses, doing defense missions and survival modes, all of which even have their own bonus objectives and rankings based on your team's performance. And should you have the chance to complete those bonus objectives and missions, you are able to possibly even get a chance to include things like, say, having a bonus wave of enemies or bonus bosses, or even just better treasure in general. Though, one thing to be wary of is that only characters in your party when doing these quests grant you EXP, while other characters that you bench only get EXP from either doing just the side quests in general or the main story. However, the main appeal from these quests is either to do it in either solo or online co-op, and from my experience with the latter, I have to say it's actually kind of fun, and not gonna lie, I actually wish other action RPGs started implementing this as an idea, especially when you have party members. Though the AI themselves are fairly more competent, one of the more better ones compared to ones that are just either dumb or just want to go Leroy Jenkins and get themselves killed. Also, not gonna lie, one caveat I do have is the matchmaking from my experience isn't all that great, so I hope that does get improved. Or maybe because I live in Australia, which obviously the internet's not always great here. Other things also involves having a mini game where you can find a ghost treasure chest, and all you have to do is just run and collect these crystals for a short period of time, and if you're able to get them before time runs out, you get a bonus treasure chest. And there's also these hallowed stone things, where if you do find them, you get to be able to face harder enemies throughout the area. There's also, Sir Barlord, or Sir Barrold, whoever one calls it. And it's basically a train dummy, and it's made just to test out your combos as well as attacks, and it even has your own set of challenges as well. And then, of course, like other Granblue staples, there's the Fate episodes, which allows you to view and see the characters' own backstories and own individual arcs they have in this game, as well as even some of them even being playable quests in general, and doing these will increase either your stats or give you extra sigil slots. And of course, there's also the aforementioned chapter select, allowing you to revisit areas in the main story and bosses. And honestly, there's also of course the massive post game itself, which will involve tons of more harder quests, including refighting tougher variations of bosses in the main story, as well as general exclusive and as well as general new bosses, and even some of the reskin bosses you fight have their own unique moves. Though it can be grindy at times, so do be prepared for that, and something I'll touch in the future maybe. And of course, speaking of story mode in general, it's robust with lots of great set pieces like boarding and raiding an enemy ship, turret sections, as well as even playing something that's akin to like say Final Fantasy 16 or even Shadow of the Colossus. And again, it's epic. At the time of this video, we will also be getting new post-launch content in the next few weeks and months, like things like a brand new raid boss including the infamous Lucius, as well as even 3 new playable characters like Seophon, Treyen, and Sandalphon. There's quite a bit more to go through, but honestly, I think I'm good for now. My general playthrough of this game in general took around maybe like say over 30 hours to beat, which is not bad. Mostly doing just a couple of Fate episodes here and there. Though if I did every single one, as well as even more quests, I could reach maybe like say 100 or 200 hours if I really want to. And yeah, well, that was good short. Not even 10 minutes. And finally, we reached the end. And with all that said, is this game worth the 8-year long wait? And, well, the short answer is yes, and my long answer is also yes, though I do have some notes. Overall, I had a blast with this game, from the visuals, characters, music, solid story, as well as also having wonderful gameplay. As a Granblue fan, it's definitely a great entry. Though when it comes to newcomers, it's a little bit tricky, especially since you are going to be thrown into a continuing chapter, though I think game fans of the action RPG genre in general will get a kick out of it and still have a good time. So, in general, I'll give this game 4 Sierra cards out of 5, and with its recent success, selling over 1 million units just over by a week after its release, and doing well review-wise, I do hope that we do get more games like this, as well as side games do improve upon Relink's issues. Anyway, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you played this game, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of it. With that said, Mad Kaiser, out.